gender equality means better business, leveraging the women's empowerment principles, and introduction. We are very excited to have all of you here today to join us to this conversation. We have some great speakers lined up today that will also share their experience of being a WEP signatory. And it's co-organized with UN Women and the UN Secretariat, and we will know a little bit more about our objectives in a little bit. So I will hand this over to Natalia, if you can go to the next slide. Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. And thanks for showing where you're from. We appreciate very much. We can see that we are coming from all over the world. But I'd like to introduce Natalia Nedel, who's the Chief of Enabling and Outreach Services at the Office of Supply Chain Management and the Department of Operational Support of the UN Secretariat. And it's myself, Anna Felt, head of the WEP Secretariat, and my colleague Diana Ragnola, who some of you might be familiar with under operations of the WEP Secretariat side. So Natalia, over to you.
Thank you, Anna. I'm delighted to welcome you today to the Women's Empowerment Principles one-on-one training. I'm so pleased to see a large participation of UN Secretariat contractors from different business sectors showing interest in this subject. Of course, achieving gender equality and empowering all women and girls is one of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals embraced by the UN Secretariat, as well as other UN organizations. The Office of Supply Chain Management in the UN Secretariat is dedicated to promoting the principles of women empowerment throughout its supply chain by reducing barriers to women serving in the field, by increasing participation of women-owned businesses in procurement efforts, by fostering gender parity, and by promoting the same within its contractors, among many other efforts. Advancing gender equality and women's empowerment in the broad context of supply chain operations not only contributes to reducing systemic discrimination, but it also broadens the economic base, increases suppliers' diversity, enhances suppliers' access to business networks, provides high-value market opportunities and sustainable revenue streams. We have embarked on several initiatives, such as capacity development training for women-owned businesses, conducted dedicated business seminars also for women-owned businesses, considering gender needs in developing technical requirements for our peacekeeping operations, performance management, and many more. This training is one of such initiatives and is aimed at developing these principles within our contractors, which are an integral part of our supply chain. We are grateful for the ability to partner with UN Women to guide us in this endeavor, and who has a wealth of resources to help you and us achieve this goal. I invite you to also hear the presentations of our contractor SAP, who is signatory to the Women Empowerment Principles. They will share with us their experience, their challenges and opportunities, and will provide you with insightful information about their journey. Above all, I hope you will find their passion and enthusiasm contagious to drive change and together make an impact in the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Natalia, for this welcoming remarks. And indeed, the group that we have with us today are very important UN suppliers, and SAP being one of them. So we'd like to welcome Supriya Jha, who is the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at SAP. And Supriya, we know that you have a lot of experience of working on gender equality in the market. We'd like to hear from you a little bit on why is gender equality important in today's market?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you very much, Anna. First of all, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone who's joining us. I hope folks who are joining from places where it's nighttime, I hope we don't bore you to death. But I'm very grateful for being here. I have joined SAP from NASDAQ which is an amazing company as well, joined SAP back in November as the new Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer. Anna and I have been very close partners back from my NASDAQ times, in all our initiatives around, gender equity and women's empowerment. From my perspective, and by the way, before I go ahead, I also want to say that some members of my team are, joining us here as well today. There's Kaveri, who's, my comms partner, and Shruti Sharma, who will be talking in detail about, women's empowerment and gender advancement, specifically as it pertains to SAP. To answer your question, Anna, I think gender equality, in my view, is not just a fundamental human right. It's also a very necessary foundation for a peaceful, prosperous and sustainable world. And very specifically, when it pertains to business, there are innumerable research studies that show that a diverse work environment is one where there's more, innovation. It is definitely far more engaging for people to have, the diversity of variety of perspectives. And, ultimately, it is the right thing for companies to do, to make sure that they have a system and a process in place that is, equitable for all. So from my perspective, as somebody who has been working in the diversity and inclusion space for a really long time, I feel now companies have come to a very meaningful understanding around equality, equity in general as it pertains to gender, race, and so on. But gender equity is something that is continues to be a challenge for companies. But at the end of the day, when we focus on gender equality, it only works very well for the entire organization, because gender equality is not just about women's empowerment and women's advancement. In my view, it's also about being mindful of the needs of men and boys around the world, so, and other genders around the world. So I think overall it's just the right thing for a company to do that cares about its own profits, that cares about its investors, stakeholders, and the communities that it lives and works in.
Thank you so much, Supriya, for these insights. And indeed, there are many stakeholders that are watching companies today, whether it is those that are looking for a job and want to make sure they are fitting well into the climate and the situation of the culture of the company. There are investors that are looking to make sure that their investments are sustainable and that they minimize the risk in those investments. Consumers are looking to make sure that they're aligning their values with that of the company. And so there are many stakeholders. And one, as you also mentioned, it leads to innovation, and it helps with talent retention, where policies are in place to help the company to retain its great talent and even be competitive on the market, on the labor market, to get the best talent into the company. So thanks so much, Supriya. I know that you need to run off to another meeting, but thank you so much for these introductory remarks. And we'll now move into a little bit more for those that are not familiar with the Women's Empowerment Principles, to give you a little bit of an overview of what these principles are. They focus, as we heard from Supriya, they focus on the workplace, they focus on the marketplace, and they focus on the community. And all three pillars are key to success. We know that many companies are focusing on the workplace, but we see today in today's market that the marketplace and community are becoming increasingly important for all companies. And the marketplace is also the area where we can help support women's empowerment throughout the supply chain. So what we are covering here with the 7 women's empowerment principles are a key first pillar and principle is the gender equal corporate leadership. This is where we are asking the CEO or the top person of the company to make a public commitment to the women's empowerment principles and to put in place resources and an action plan that follows that commitment. We have 2, 3, and 4 are focusing on the workplace issue, and I will go a little bit more into detail into the individual principles in a little bit. 5 is the marketplace, 6 is the community, And 7 is also very key principles, because if you don't measure what you're doing, you don't know what results you're having, and if you're making progress at all. So this is really a key element. We would now have a quick look at our video as an introduction.
Think about the impact of a signature. Think about the magnitude of a global movement. Think about the difference you can make and the power of transformative change. By signing the Women's Empowerment Principles, you can galvanize your shareholders and stakeholders to drive change in the workplace, marketplace, and community through a framework of 7 principles. Brought to you by UN Women and UN Global Compact, the Women's Empowerment Principles are a roadmap for business sustainability, innovation, and productivity. Businesses by the thousands and in every sector are becoming part of this world-changing movement to advance gender equality. Businesses that become models for attracting talent, entering new markets, serving their communities, and measurably improving the bottom line. Because gender equality means better business. Don't miss this moment to make a lasting impact on your employees, suppliers, customers, and investors. Join leading companies already on the journey to greater sustainability and growth. Commit to the Women's Empowerment Principles and make today your organization's signature moment.
Thank you. So that was an introduction, and we have, as you can also see on our website, weps.org, we have a map that you can see exactly which companies have joined us. There are nearly 6,000 companies that have made this commitment across 141 countries. So we welcome you to this network of companies that are showing commitment to gender equality. We have designed a WEPs journey for you to understand a little bit more of what does it mean to become a WEP signatory. And in the first stage, which I believe most of you are today, is the considering state. And we hope that this webinar today, this introduction, will make you understand what it means to be a signatory. And we will have a few minutes of a Q&A afterwards that we can answer any of your questions. So put your questions in the Q&A box. But this is the time to also galvanize internally your stakeholders, your internal stakeholders, engage with your external stakeholders, and to understand what this commitment could mean to your company. Each company is unique. Today we hear from SAP, but your company is unique in a sense of what would be the right approach for you. But we do invite all of you to sign the Women's Empowerment Principles, as mentioned earlier. It is the CEO, the top person in the company, which we have heard from many, many companies that this is really significant. Without that top level commitment, few resources will be allocated and support will be given within the company to move the action plan forward. At that point, we're also asking you to make this commitment public. You will have a spot on our website to showcase that commitment, but also to go out on social media and press releases and any other ways to show this commitment to your stakeholder, that they know that you are embarking on this journey. Activate is where we activate stakeholders internally. Engaging is engaging external stakeholders, which includes your suppliers, your business partners, your stakeholders in a broader ecosystem. Sustain is to help you galvanize the correct data to track your progress and against the action plan, and reporting is a function that we launched about a year ago on our website that we encourage you to report against 7 indicators. This is of course voluntary, and you have an option to show it internally or to the public. So principle 1, I have already touched quite a bit about it. It is about that corporate leadership that is integral to making gender equality and women's empowerment a top strategic priority for the company. It needs to be embedded in the business model. It needs to be embedded in the way that the company is run, the culture is being fostered. And it's really key to making progress on all of the other principles. Principle 2 focuses on the workplace and treating all the women and men fairly at work. So it's the linkage here to respect and support for human rights and non-discrimination. There are many issues that are being tackled in this principle 2. It is from equal pay to talent acquisition in an equal and fair manner, retention that we talked a little bit about earlier, and making sure that employees are retained and satisfied, and the satisfaction will help, of course, with the retention. It is also here where focusing on this principle in particular will also help with productivity and better decision making, because you have achieved a better diversity and inclusive work environment. Principle 3 is about the health and safety and well-being of women and men workers. What we have seen, we talked a lot prior to the COVID pandemic about work-life balance under principle 2, but principle 3 has really adopted this principle because it has become more and more important that work-life balance is included in the health and safety of workers. And the employers play a key role in preserving this physical, emotional health, safety, and well-being of all the women and men employees. Principle 4 is both to foster an understanding of gender equality within the company through training and awareness raising within the company, but it also focuses on training that can help advance women's professional development. When we look at some of the statistics from companies that have started to report against the women's empowerment principles, we see that there are fewer women at higher level positions. So this one is key to help women also progress within the company and achieve managerial and executive level positions. So there's a twofold track on both awareness raising about gender equality and women's professional development. Principle 5 is a really interesting and important one. It has a few different elements. It focuses on the supply chain and how you as a company can use your supply chain to help foster gender equality and women's empowerment across your supply chain and in the market. It is holding your suppliers to account to gender equality, making sure that they in turn hold their suppliers and their business partners to account. And we hope with this approach that we will also be able to touch and empower women in the informal sector, which might not be your direct business partners, but with this approach that we can achieve poverty reduction, we can empower women and girls in the communities as well. So this kind of supply chain approach is very important. This principle is also touching upon advertising and marketing. It is advertising that the consumers, for you that are consumer-facing companies, might have a huge opportunity here to showcase in your advertising and marketing and help shift the perceptions and social norms on what it is to be a woman, what it is to be a man, or to kind of touch upon all the genders and portraying women and men and other genders in a modern, authentic, and multidimensional role, to show them as intelligent beings in that advertising and marketing. And this is, you have a key role here to do so in whatever outreach material you have, to shift that thinking about what it is and who can a woman be a leader in the tech sector? Can a man take on what otherwise is being seen as stereotypically women's roles? So this is a very, very powerful principle that also fosters and encourages your support of women entrepreneurs, that women entrepreneurs are also being included in your supply chain. Principle 6 is engagement with women and girls in local communities. And many of you already have community development programs, but also to think how to do it in a scalable way that touches upon the largest number of women and girls in the local communities where you are operating. It is to engage them if you are coming out with new products and new approaches, to actually hear their voices and their needs, and as well, to really kind of engage the women and girls as well as local community leaders in your business processes. Finally, principle 7 is about the tracking of results. Transparency fosters accountability. And that's why I mentioned earlier how important it is when you do make a commitment to gender equality, when you do sign the women's empowerment principles, that really helps with the accountability, both internally and externally. So it's key to measure and publicly report on your progress. We can move on to the next. So signing on is a quite simple process. We have on our website all the materials. This is an screenshot from the website where you have the CEO statement of support in different languages. The CEO signs it and you upload it to our website. And we are here to support for those that are interested. But you have all the information that you need to complete the application. We also have frequently asked questions and the WEPs brochure that contains everything that you need to be able to make this commitment. We also have communication resources, templates for press releases and social media assets, etc., to help you to really make this commitment. We have also a lot of resources for you. You can find them also on our website. It goes from thematic guides that go into detail on what you can do in different areas under each of these principles that I walked you through. You also have testimonies from leaders on what they have done to really advance gender equality and women's empowerment within their companies. You have case studies, you have action in crisis is a lot of recommendation that we developed in view of the COVID crisis and to help you understand some of the issues. We have some guidance, for example, on domestic violence that has become a big issue as people are working from home. But we also have a series of public policies from different countries that are fostering engagement, legislation and policies from different governments to secure the private sector's engagement with gender equality. We also have a lot of different FAQs and how-tos and to help you on your way. But of course, we are also here, myself and Diana, to answer any of your questions. We have a learning platform, WEPs Learn, that I will just touch upon briefly in a little bit. But I think what could be a good starting point for you is what we call All About the WEPs. This is a handbook that helps you understand what this initiative is about and what you can do and what others have already been doing to foster gender equality in their companies. So here's just some examples of those resources that are available to you. We have, I mentioned the importance of procurement and the supply chain, and we have one particular dedicated resource for that, for you to understand how you can, as purchaser, in this case also as suppliers to the UN, but also in your turn, what is it that you can do to engage with your suppliers and business partners. And a variety, I think we have about 50 case studies from other companies and how they're going about it. What are the challenges? How did they overcome those challenges? So these are resources for you as a web signatory to really help you to advance on this journey. And the Equality Means Business is the WEPs handbook, or the brochure as we call it, that includes everything you need to know about the women's empowerment principles. And the transparency and accountability booklet is also giving you examples of KPIs that you can be using to track progress. Finally, on the WEPs Learn, we have gathered a few different e-learning modules that focus both on WEPs implementation, personal development, and business development. So this is also for you and for your colleagues to take advantage of and know how to create a gender action plan. On the personal development side, we have what we call boosters, boost your confidence, your assertiveness, your leadership, etc., to be really great gender champions, or those skills can be used across the board. And a few also on for women entrepreneurs and how to understand the entrepreneurial world. I think we'll move to the next. So here's an opportunity. I see here there is one question in the Q&A. If we will be sharing this slide for post-event, yes, we will, together with the recording of this event. So you could listen to this again afterwards. I'm looking to see if there are any other questions from somebody else. I see we have people from all over the world, and I'm very happy to see people from France, Cambodia, UAE, Kenya. Do you have any questions at this point? Put them in the chat box and we're happy to respond. You will have another opportunity after the presentation from Suchi from SAP. Maybe I'll just give it maybe another minute to see if there are any other questions. So I see there's one question here from Esther. How can the individuals be empowered directly in this initiative beside the contracts role? I think the best way here, as I mentioned, the WEPs Learn has different modules for individual empowerment. We put them up both for the purpose of your individual empowerment, but we also believe that once you're individually empowered in your company, you can also help us drive the gender equality agenda. So we have had that kind of twofold perspective here in developing these boosters on assertiveness, on leadership, on presentation skills, etc. Any other questions at this point, or shall we see? Oh, there's one question here. We have one question that is asked saying like this: it's a wonderful session. I'm a consultant and would like to know how I can push my clients to implement these principles. So thank you so much, Devika, for this. I think this is a very important question. And I think it's about awareness raising about the women's empowerment principles. Happy to discuss this further with you. But I think spreading the message and sharing the resources that we have on our website would really help them to understand. We have also regular what we call WEPs 101 sessions that we post invitations on our website, and you could invite your clients to attend those 101 WEPs 101 webinars to learn more about the women's empowerment principles. And I really appreciate your support in trying to engage your clients in this agenda as well. And then we have, I think we have a lot of synergies. Jody, happy to speak with you again. You are one of the board of directors for UNFCU Foundation for Women, and love to speak to you at some point. If you would like to get direct touch with us and have individual questions or comments, we are available at weps@unwomen.org. So we also have Mali, who is asking, how long has this initiative been going on? It is, we actually conceptualized the women's empowerment principles in 2009. So it's been quite some time. It initially started off as a campaign. For those who have been observing this gender equality on the market, probably can see that at that time we were hoping to get the CEO commitment. Since 4 years, we have started to really develop resources for companies, and now we are taking it this year to the next level. So stay tuned, and we will have more to offer you in this year, and in September you will see where we are heading. But we are focusing on, we've been focusing on getting the commitment in the initial phase of this women's empowerment principles. Since 2018, we focus on real implementation. In 2019, 2020, and 2021, we've been focusing on transparency. And as you will see on our website, you can see company examples, and they've been showcased on the website on their commitment. And going forward, we're focusing on the accountability. So stay tuned on this. And we hope to have you part of this network of committed companies. Of course, it's possible to share the toolkit with other companies. Manar is asking, and happy to share with the link in the chat box as well, but you can find it in weps.org/about. That's the link where you find the entire toolkit, and it's clickable. And please do share it, because we want to see gender equality being adopted and really influencing the market as much as possible. And thanks, Jody, for also sharing your mission to sustain the path out of poverty through healthcare and education for women and girls. This is a key part of the principles of focusing on the well-being of women and girls, both within the company, outside the company, and in local communities. So thank you so much for these questions. We'll have another round after the presentation by Chuchi. So I think we will call upon you now. Chuchi, if you're there.
I'm here. Hello.
Very good. So unfortunately, we also had Safaricom invited. We'll probably invite them to another meeting, but she was unable to join. But Chuchi Charma, welcome to the webinar. Chuchi is a global lead for inclusive career journeys in SAP. And we'll hear from her today a little bit about SAP's WEPs journey and how SAP has been promoting gender equality and women's empowerment. So over to you, Chuchi.
Thanks so much. Hi, hello everyone, and thank you, Anna, for having me, and the team for having me here today. It's really a pleasure to be able to be here and share some of what we've done at SAP related to gender equality over the last several years. It's certainly been a journey for us as an organization. And we've had a fantastic collaboration with the UN Women Organization that has really helped us along this journey, and hopefully we've helped others in this process as well. Can you all see my screen? I'm going to share some information with you today that I thought these slides would be helpful for.
Yes, we do. Thank you.
Fantastic. So just for all of you who may not be familiar with SAP, SAP is the world's largest, one of the world's largest software companies, and we have been around for, gosh, 48 years. We're actually celebrating our 50th anniversary this year. And basically our business is everything, all the software that supports back office to boardroom functions. And our goal is very simple. We are here to make the world run better. And we have a very, our business really relies on innovation. And that is really one of the main drivers for why we recognize that in order for us to innovate as a global organization, we have to create a workplace that is fair and inclusive of all. And that is what we are striving to do. We strive to be the most inclusive company on the planet. We have a number of incentives to do that, but really what I want to share with you is some really broader data. What we have seen is that organizations with inclusive cultures that have strong focus on gender and inclusion for all underrepresented minorities and value differences, we know that they're 2 times more likely to exceed their financial targets, 3 times more likely to be high performing. They're just better businesses. In fact, there are over 200 studies that show that companies that focus on gender equity, on inclusion, are much more profitable, much more innovative. So frankly, I think that point is really sort of table stakes at this point. As Supriya had earlier said, you know, companies understand how meaningful and important this is for them. And we know that there's a lot of trends in our world that are making our workplace more diverse. We know that 350 million people with disabilities will enter the workforce over the next 10 years, and we need that talent, right? So we need to accommodate and adjust and ensure that our facilities, our organizations are accessible. And we know that this diversity in society will only increase because it is how our world is evolving, and it is how human beings are evolving as well, with migration, mobility, and our interconnectedness. So there's a very strong case to be made. And we as an organization have certainly embraced that. What I thought might be useful was to share with you how we have really embraced all of the WEPs in thinking about our organizational strategy and how we are implementing gender equality, or striving towards reaching gender equality, I should say. So I'll take you through those very briefly, and please feel free to ask me any questions after this on this. But, you know, starting with principle 1 of establishing that high-level corporate leadership for gender equality, we did this through a very strong mandate from our CEO, and we've set very clear targets for the organization that distribute accountability across our leadership. So all of our leaders understand that in their businesses, they're at a certain place today, and they need to achieve a certain percentage increase in gender equality. Second is to treat all women and men fairly at work. And this is table stakes, obviously, to respect and support human rights. But we've been very intentional about implementing a very rigorous code of conduct and policies that support this, because policies last in organizations over time as leadership tends to change. And so it's something we can really rely on and always go back to. Foundational for our strategy and for all the work that we are trying to do in this space. The third principle around ensuring the health, safety, and well-being of all women and men workers, this is something we also don't take lightly. It is focused through our organizational setup. We have an entire group focused on health and well-being. And for example, during the pandemic, we extended benefits for our employees to ensure that they could take care of both their physical and mental health. And we now dedicate time off for simply mental health, rest, and recovery. And we continue to focus on this through education, awareness building in the organization. Burnout is real, and we will probably, all experience. We probably all have experienced some strain on our own mental health during these last 2 years. So it's imperative to be very intentional about this going forward. On promoting education, training, and professional development for women, this is something we've also really embedded into our strategy. We have various professional development programs for women and underrepresented minorities running in the organization. And we look to those in terms of developing our talent, because we know that promotion is a major driver of reaching equity at all levels. In terms of implementing the enterprise development, supply chain, marketing practices that are going to be equitable for women, we have taken great strides there with our marketing organization to ensure that all of our visuals, for example, are very appropriate and equitable and feature women in a way that is not in any way diminutive, for example. We look at all of our branding tools and imagery, because optics matter, right? They send subconscious messages. So we take great pains to ensure that all of our advertisements demonstrate inclusivity. Promoting equality through community initiatives and advocacy. We have a very strong corporate social responsibility function, mission in the organization. And so we dedicate a lot of funding towards all of the initiatives that support developing STEM talent for women and underrepresented minorities in many parts of the world. And that's been a growing area of emphasis for us over the last few years. And then we do measure and publicly report on our progress. Very important for holding our organization accountable and helping our employees see that we are committed to this and we are intentional about the progress we intend to make. All of these principles provide such an incredible framework that a company can really design their strategy around them and see progress. We have been able to really move the needle on women in leadership through embracing these principles and embedding them into our strategy. And we've been able to reach many of our goals and targets, and we are still striving towards reaching significant ones. We aim to reach gender parity by 2030, but have the targets necessary, the programs in place, the tools, and the accountability driven across the organization in order to do so. A couple other things I'll share with you in terms of how we've set this up is, one, we look to have a global focus, implement very structural solutions. We embed into our policies and into our processes in order to ensure that they are sustainable for the long term. We believe in universal ownership. This is something that everyone owns, not just the diversity and inclusion organization or HR or a certain subset or team. This is everyone's responsibility in the organization. And then we've been very focused on making some long-term investments that are going to drive gender parity. And we rely on data for everything. Data-driven decision-making is extraordinarily important to ensure transparency, consistency, and a structured focus towards reaching our objectives. In addition to the principles, we've also used this best practices heat map to look at what really works in addition. And many of these are also built into the topics are built into the WEPs toolkit. But we know that, for example, leadership accountability, coaching, and sponsorship are also very important. So we look to include all of these areas as well in our overarching strategy. But overall, the WEPs principles are so important and fantastic for helping an organization design their framework. And if we, an organization of 100,000, can do this, I know that many of you will have just as easy a time as incorporating and embracing these principles into how you drive towards gender parity going forward. And I hope that's been a helpful overview, and I look forward to hearing your questions.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Uchi, for this fantastic presentation. I won't repeat what you said because there was so much information and so great insights that you were providing to our participants today. But I think that universal ownership is really, really key. And I think that's why we encourage companies to also take the time before they sign up to the principles, to really have that engagement internally, to make sure that the key leaders in the company are on board and are also able and willing to kind of create that universal ownership. It's for all of us, whether it's women or men, whether at the floor or the top. Everybody should have and be accountable towards this agenda. The other point that you mentioned, which is also critical, and I mentioned it a little bit before, is the importance of data-driven decision-making. If you don't have the data, how would you know where you stand on your journey towards gender equality? So thank you so much for this great insights. We'll take a few minutes to see if there are questions from our participants linked specifically to your experience of implementing this agenda. Hello from Nigeria. Hello back to Nigeria. Miriam, do you have a question? I think I have, while we're waiting to, okay, we have one question here from Mali. Brilliant. How long did it take for SAP to notice a difference, especially with your people after taking the WEP step? Really interesting to know.
Once we as an organization really committed to a target and an ambition and put in place the systems and processes which we continue to refine and continue to work on, we did start to see progress, I would say, within a year. And, you know, there are two main drivers in any organization. It's hiring and promotion. And so those are the systems that we really address on an ongoing basis to advance our objectives around gender parity. But we have been on this journey since 2017. So we made a 5% jump in women in leadership from 2017. And then in between 2012 and 2017. And then in 2017, we made another challenge to the organization. And we will not stop until 2030 when we reach 50%. And even then, we will continue because I will say, you know, maintaining parity in an organization will continue to be an ongoing function of the organization. It's not something that goes away. You have to continue to iterate on it and make it a priority.
Yeah, it also takes some time to kind of collect the data and have some result from that data collection process, right? We've got a few other comments here. We have one question, if you could speak to why mentoring is considered low success. I'll take a few questions here and you can elaborate on them. And the other one is how to overcome the challenge of a woman leader should always have to be better than the man to get into that position. How can we avoid the men to be chosen for those positions? And then there was a question about if you could explain. Sorry, are there too many? We can stop here and I can bring you back.
No worries. I can start with the first and second one. Happy to. You know, I think the question was, why is mentoring considered low success? I will say mentoring is extraordinarily important, right? And it should happen cross-generationally within an organization. It should happen, you know, between all sorts of people in all sorts of combinations. And frankly, that's how we grow. But when we think about mentoring, oftentimes what we see and what data shows us is that women are mentored and over-mentored on behavior. Men are mentored on strategy. And so it doesn't always help us to mentor a female on behavior because frankly, we don't need to fix women. Women are great, women are fine. What we need to do really is sponsor them. And oftentimes, as we know in many organizations that are dominated by males, in order to advance, you also need to navigate internal networks and get more access to and visibility to some of those leadership networks that can help a person advance. So we look at that in the context of sponsorship and mentorship, where sponsorship is all that much more powerful because it is about opening doors, creating visibility for your talent, supporting, encouraging, and endorsing them so that they can continue to advance in the organization.
Great. There was a question also about if there was difficulties getting the buy-in from the CEO. Was there an effort to particular initiative to influence this commitment? And who led this in the organization? Thanks, Ellen, for that question.
Yeah, thank you for that question. There is sometimes a necessity to create that case. In our organization, we were fortunate to have a CEO at the time who was a very strong supporter of diversity and understood that having diversity of thought and perspectives in the organization was extraordinarily important for our business longevity. Our customer base is changing, frankly, and it is becoming more diverse by not only gender, but also ethnicity, function. We need to represent the needs of our customers. So it's all that much more of a business imperative for us to ensure we have diversity. But I also have a very strong personal view on this, which I'll share among friends here, is that, when people ask about what is the business case for the diversity, and I said, I don't think I need a business case to justify my own existence as a female woman of color. I am here. We don't need a business case to justify our own humanity. And I know that's a bold statement, but it's one I frankly believe in very strongly. But I understand you have to have a business conversation with business leaders. And so some of what I already shared can be very helpful in having that conversation and talking about what is the future of the organization, who are the customers, and how do we need to really ensure that if we are building a business for the future is in the room.
Great. No, thanks for sharing that personal view as well, because I think that's very key for those that feel that they would want to use that argument as well. John is asking for some insights on how to combat historical or entrenched cultural and organizational resistance to empowering women. If you have any insights there. I know that SAP is a very forward-looking but you might have had some in some departments, some of these experiences that you could share.
I will say, all of the WEPs principles really speak to this question. So for example, really having leaders that model the behavior and state what the organization's values are starts to help people understand that this organization has a value, places great value on diversity. And then creating structures and processes that are going to help people make decisions that mitigate bias. So for example, in your hiring process, how can you ensure that every time you see candidates for a certain role, they're not all one type of person, right? There are many ways to ensure that you can make the decision-making process less biased and more transparent by designing it using principles of behavioral design that don't rely on changing a person's brain structure and perhaps strongly embedded biases, but force decisions in very otherwise creative and transparent ways.
Wow, great answer. We have a question about how in SAP gender parity is flowing down your supply chain. And we have basically bravo SAP. This is from Jody and Suchi for a magnificent presentation, way ahead of your time, creating generational wealth for women. So great comment there. And there's a question again. Do you think that any training target a behavioral change towards women's empowerment can bring about change in achieving these principles? I'll stop
Anna,
there.
could you just restate that question for me one more time, please?
Yes. Do you think that any training targeting a behavioral change towards women empowerment can bring about a change in achieving the WEPs principles?
Yeah, absolutely. I will say that there's significant data that shows that on its own, training around implicit bias doesn't really work. It doesn't. Our brains are very hardwired in many cases. However, there is, I would say they work in the context of a very multifaceted strategy. So not only do we need to ensure that we build awareness in our organizations, but we also need to look at our policies, our systems, our practices, right? There is no silver bullet, but if you take all of these factors together, then you can really move the needle on behavioral change. And it is, let's all be honest here, it is a long game, right? And that is why we need everyone needs to think about this in a very strategic and structured approach, which is why the WEPs are, again, I know I've said it many times, but they are such a great framework in terms of starting on that path to guide an organization as to how do we get there? And it can be done. We have everything we need and everything we know everything we need to know to get there. It is the will and the way.
Thank you so much, Chuchi. I think there are more questions, but there's also a lot of compliments for you and for sharing this insights specifically from SAP. But I think those insights are very, very helpful to everyone here. So we'll stop the grilling of questions here. It's been extremely helpful, and thank you so much for joining us today. We have, before the closing, we have a poll that we'd like to run. Diana, we have 3 questions. The first one is: the session provided me with an understanding of the WEPs and its value for our company. In what area of the WEPs do you need additional training for us in the future to help you along? And how likely do you think your company will be signing up to the WEPs? We'll take a few minutes, half a minute per question. So appreciate very much your support, and I think they will help us to craft the next sessions that we hope that you will be joining as well. Great. I think we'll move to the next question. We have 64% response rate to this one. So thank you very much. It has been helpful. So appreciate that very much. So we'll move to the second question. In what areas you'd like additional training and resources for implementation? We have done this responses around the corporate leadership, how to get your leadership involved and working on the action plan and the commitment. workplace, marketplace, community, and the monitoring and reporting. We'll take a few seconds here as well. I see in the meantime, there was one question about our views on male allies, which we as UN Women think it's key. We have an initiative that is called He for She, that is trying to also activate men as allies for gender equality. So great point there on the male allies. It is critical. It's an agenda for all of us. And as Suchi talked about, universal ownership. This means not universal only for women. It is for women and men to engage all of us in this agenda. So it seems like there's quite equal representation of the different issues. Monitoring reporting seems to be slightly higher. Corporate leadership, workplace, marketplace, and community. So thank you very much for that. And finally, the last question. How likely will your company sign the WEPs from your perspective today? Okay, so we have a bit half of everyone that have participated. So I think we'll stop the poll there. We see that they're very likely and likely. So thank you very much. We will please reach out to us if you have any challenges or need support from us. For those that are unlikely and very unlikely, I would have been curious to know, and maybe that's why, because you already signed. So thanks for that comment. We'll now move into the closing, and I would like to hand it back to you, Natalia, to give some closing remarks.
Thank you. Okay, so first and foremost, I would like to express my appreciation to the speakers for their valuable contribution to this training. Anna Pes from UN Women, Ms. Supriya and Suchi Sharma from SAP. I also want to extend my gratitude to the staff in the Procurement Division in New York and the Enabling and Outreach Service in the UN Secretariat who work in making this training an idea and an initiative for us to engage with UN Women. And of course, I want to thank all the participants here who attended this event and answered the poll questions and raised interest on the subject. And it obviously make, in my view at least, this event a successful one. I hope that you have found this training informative as I did, and I invite you to take advantage of this training to become a signatory to the Women Empowerment Principles. We, as the UN Secretariat, will take note of the feedback received from you, and we work with UN Women to follow up on this event. I note with delight the interest demonstrated by the comments posted in the Q&A in participating and further engaging in this initiative and spreading it in your companies and with your clients. We are also planning to organize additional trainings to some of the principles, in particular towards certain principles as expressed in the poll, and we realize that perhaps the audience has various degrees of already implementing some of these principles, whether they were aware of the principles or not. So we will be happy to engage in the areas where there are gaps as well. But I hope that you will use this engagement and platform as a step for you to increase your contributions towards advancing gender equality and empowering women. So we hope that if you have not taken that step, that this will be your first step of engaging with us. UN contractors obviously have a tremendous influence in the way the UN Secretariat operates around the globe, and we hope we can count on you to advance the needed change. In any case, if you have any other suggestions for engagements, we in the UN Secretariat will be very happy to hear from you. And I will post our email address of the Enabling and Outreach Service in the chat. With that, I would like to thank you very much once again.
Thank you so much, Natalia, for these closing remarks. And I'd also like to thank you and your team for great collaboration in putting this together. Indeed, you have invited the most influential contractors and suppliers to the UN. So from our side in UN Women, we are also advancing with our procurement team on integrating the women's empowerment principles in our purchasing policies and practices to make sure that we can get to a large network and pool of companies that are taking this agenda seriously. And as we heard from our two SAP speakers today, it is something that each company needs to take into account. It is not possible in today's market, whether it is with talent, investors, community, consumers, whoever they are, these stakeholders, they are holding companies to account in different ways by purchasing, by engaging, by investing in companies. So it is something that is here to stay, and we welcome all of you to join us on this journey towards gender equality. And thank you so much. We will share the recording and the presentation in an email, and we can also share our contact details in that email. And we look forward to being in touch with you and to be able to collaborate with you from all over the world. So thank you very much, everyone, and have a great day or a great evening. Thank you so much.